Today, I'm very happy we have Resnick, the founder and CEO of the drone manufacturer BRINC Drones. It's a friend who introduced ourselves, and I'm very, very happy because you're the first guest who work in hardware. All the dropouts guests I got from now was like in software, and I have to say that I was a bit frustrated to didn't get like any builders on hardware stuff. So thank you for joining. Hello, how are you?
Yeah, thrilled to be here. And I mean, yeah, hardware is hard. It's difficult to build companies that, have to manage supply chains and deal with domestic manufacturing and accurately predict future orders. All of these things add a ton of complexity. So I don't blame the folks that spend their time building software companies, that's for sure.
It's true that to bootstrap and to start as a company, it's more difficult. There's more barrier to entry. But do you think the feedback you can get and what you can change in the world can be bigger and can be it's a different game at some point?
I think that's generally true. Don't get me wrong, software can absolutely change the world. That is very clear as well. But in the industry that we operate in, which is public safety, you really do need a hardware component for the most part in order to really affect change and save lives. So I'll give you an example. Something that we're working on right now is a 911 response drone system. So we want to make the police helicopter obsolete, and we want to use drones to respond to all 911 calls in less than a minute. And we want to do that by putting drones and nests on top of police and fire station roofs, maybe in their parking lots, integrating it with, 911 call taking systems, gunshot detection systems, Amber Alert systems. So if there ever is an emergency in a city, you're guaranteed a response in less than a minute. And, we want to use these drones to deliver Narcan, AEDs, EpiPens, give firefighters live thermal imaging views of structure fires before they even arrive on scene, tell police if what that person is holding is a lighter or gun before they show up so they know how to plan their response. That's really the promise of this technology. Just in America, 100,000 people die every year from drug overdoses. It is an absolute catastrophe. If you could reasonably deliver Narcan to a fraction of the 911 calls that come in, talking about a drug overdose in, 45 seconds, I think you can save thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of lives a year just in the US. And, it's hard for software to have that kind of impact. I think it's possible, but it's rare.
When you decided to start working on this field, on this kind of problem, you had to build your own solution, your own hardware, because it wasn't possible to just implement a software solution.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, something that's really interesting about the drone industry is it's highly monopolistic. So DJI owns about 90% of the market. Their nearest competitor is Autel. They own something like 5% of the market. They're both based in Shenzhen, China. And I mention that because in the US, the federal government has now banned itself from buying Chinese drones. 7 states have followed suit, and every legislative cycle, more states are adopting similar legislation. So there's just this wild moment in time right now where the biggest drone makers on the planet that completely own the industry cannot sell into the biggest drone buyers in the planet, being US DoD, federal government, public safety, critical infrastructure. So there's really this need for a drone maker for the free world. And that's sort of ultimately what we want to grow up and become. But I mention this both for context, but also to answer your question. There are a lot of companies in our industry that try to just do the software. They try to integrate with DJI systems or Autel systems, write an extra bit of software on top of that. But then they can't sell into, number one, our main customer base, which is a super big problem. And also they're stuck with this really general hardware that isn't really customized to the use cases. And there are all sorts of ways to make the hardware better to suit the needs of first responders. In our first drone, we had a glass breaking system. So we built the first drone in the world that could like fly up to a window, break it out, fly inside, continue a mission. Or our drones are the first in the world to have two-way audio. So you can put on a crisis negotiator, use the drone like a flying cell phone. These are features that a manufacturer that mostly sells to consumer or commercial customers would never build. They would never build a glass breaker for like a consumer use case. But if you're trying to sell the public safety, police, fire, disaster response, you do build those features. So it's a way to both, number one, just sell it all into our customer base, but number two, to build them the right thing, to build them the tool they actually need to fully solve their problem. And yeah, that's why I think it's really important that we're doing, all the hardware and all the software and building a single solution that we can give to our customers to actually do what they need.
I wanted to go back to your childhood, to be honest, because I think like a lot of people who are listening this podcast, they are young builders, long ambitious founders, and some of them are maybe drop out or think of dropping out or think of unconventional path. What was your childhood looks like?
Yeah, no, that's right. So I was born in Nashville, Tennessee. I didn't live there for long though. Parents moved to Las Vegas when I was really young. I grew up in Las Vegas. Dad's a doc. Mom was a special ed teacher, which she said very much helped her raise me. I went to school. I'm dyslexic though. So when I was very young, I very much struggled initially to learn how to read and write. My mom recognized this super early though, and she enrolled me in a bunch of like after school classes. Those helped tremendously. So I would go to school like 8 a.m., stay there until about 3 p.m. And then I would do the after school classes for maybe like another 3 hours from like 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. or something. And then, I'd have to do my homework, which maybe wasn't like so fun at the time, but I wonder now if it contributed to my work ethic, like at least a little bit, like just getting into the rhythm of like putting in some hours from a young age, and also kind of watching from my perspective how that investment of time resulted in me learning how to like read and write. Still struggle a little bit with the spelling part, but like I think the other is pretty down pat now, which is positive development. Yeah, and kind of like after I mostly got over that hurdle, I started doing pretty well in school. I ended up skipping 7th grade. So I went into 8th grade a little young. Then I went to high school for only about a year and a half. And then I started going to college. So I skipped like my last 3 years of high school. At first, I was going to college at UNLV, which is my local university in Las Vegas, which I liked. Then I transferred to Northwestern. I went there briefly and then dropped out.
What kind of chill you were like in school with your friends, with like a teacher?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was introverted and nerdy for sure. Yeah, when I was young, I fully wanted to be a scientist.
You were working on some projects beside the school?
Yeah, always. So it started off with like Lego kits and like taking apart appliances and failing to put them back together. But then the projects kind of like grew in complexity. I built like a pulse jet engine when I was young. So it's like a very simple type of jet engine. That was a lot of fun. I built a whole bunch of drones, racing drones and big flying wings. And like, I always loved working on that kind of stuff. My biggest like personal project was I built an inertial electrostatic confinement nuclear fusion reactor, which definitely freaked out my neighbors, but I had a lot of fun. So that did like deuterium fusion. I built up this like vacuum chamber with a mechanical roughing pump, and then like a secondary pump in order to achieve a higher level of vacuum. I was able to buy like heavy water off the internet and did electrolysis on it to collect some deuterium gas, which is fuel. In order to build one of these things, you need a big power supply too. So I built like a 50-ish kV power supply that I could use to establish this like really large electrostatic potential between like an inner tungsten grid in this fusion reactor and like the outer vacuum chamber.
I just went out of a call with a 16-year-old guy who was trying to use nuclear waste to create a source of energy. He was telling me how like the nuclear stopped working and why like the nuclear waste wasn't used because it's more expensive than new one. But I was like very intrigued by this idea of building so much ambitious hardware stuff at this youngest age. Did you find any buddies on your city or your school that were like helping you with this kind of project? Or you were like pretty alone on this kind of stuff?
No, all of this was pretty much just me. I mean, I benefited immensely from access to the internet, though. I mean, there are forums online of people building these things. There are YouTube videos. There are all sorts of resources that you can utilize. And, I learned a lot from them, both building the fuser, but building drones and like learning software.
But do you think internet helps you grow your curiosity and help you got idea of project?
Well, I just wanted to see if I could do it. I mean, it seemed like such an exciting project. And no, 100%. Like you go on the internet and you read about other people accomplishing the same thing. It's like, wow, this is possible. It's something I can do. And not only is it possible, like there are guides online and all sorts of people willing to help you in like the process of building a device like this. And again, that's true like across multiple domains, multiple communities. The internet's really amazing. If you use it well, it's just, I mean, it's the best resource ever conceived to like learn, right?
I used to say that internet can be the best way for you to learn stuff and to Google and to find your way, but it also can be like the best enemy because you have access to so much resource and so much thing that at some point you can feel like unfocused or there's like too much information so you don't know how to concentrate.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I mean, I think the bigger risk is just, I mean, there are a lot of things on the internet that are just extremely distracting and like mostly a waste of time. Like all the sort of like algorithmic video shorts platforms, TikTok obviously, and everything else. I think especially now, incredibly easy to get sucked into one of those rabbit holes instead of like, reading your boring drone forum page that looks like it was, all designed in 2004. And there are definitely more fun things to do on the internet than to learn.
Yeah, of course. And it's a question of channel. So like if you're going on this kind of app about short tutorial, etc., the way it's created is to make you be here and stay here. It's to make you like not churn of the app, etc. And so at this point, you're going to be like overstimulated.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I should be clear, like, I also think there is 100% a place for entertainment, right? Like, if you just work for 10, 12 hours and your brain feels like mush and you just like need to like not think about your life for a second, it's freaking awesome. And it like fully serves that use case. Like, I'm not sure that many people are really like starting on like the nuclear reactor forums and then like getting sucked into a TikTok rabbit hole and, failing to come out for hours on end.
And so you started the college pretty earlier at a usually young age. What did you face? Like learn, but also like the life with people who were like older than you? Like
UNLV is definitely a commuter school. So that's something that's important to keep in mind. Really not many people live on campus. Like people drive in, they do their classes, then they'll go to work, then they go back. I never felt like there was a huge community at UNLV, to be perfectly honest. It did exist, but it's something that you would have to go out and find and then like intentionally enter. And that isn't something that I ever really did. I definitely looked young, but I think I was more or less passable as a freshman at UNLV. I was like maybe 15, 16 when I started. Again, total baby face, so like maybe I'm wrong about that, but I was at least tall. I was like already 6 foot or so. So I think I mostly passed, but my friends during that time, they were like my friends from middle school and my friends from high school. Like my social circle didn't change. I still hung out with the same. I guess I was actually 14 when I started at UNLV, but I still think I looked like somewhat.
It was like in terms of maturity and more like social maturity. Do you think like you didn't feel any difference, any barrier, etc.?
I never really pushed the envelope in that domain. Like I wouldn't go to the parties. I'd talk to folks in class, and those interactions were fine. I succeeded at the academic work. My mom would like drive me there. She'd drop me off. Like I'd do my stuff for the day. She'd come and like pick me up, and that's how it worked. Then I went and transferred to Northwestern, and like definitely everyone, of course, like is living at Northwestern, not a commuter school at all. I was in the dorms. I definitely did not like Northwestern. Like, that was not a particularly happy period of my life at all. I just interned at Tesla. At that point, I kind of wanted to stay at Tesla. So that was something that was on my mind. I was in the Bay Area. I thought the Bay Area was interesting. I kind of wanted to stay there. I felt at that point that I was a competent engineer. I didn't think that I needed school in order to do my job, to engineer things that were interesting. That was kind of validated through my time working at Tesla. And before that, I worked at McLaren and did useful work there. And I did this nuclear reactor project. So it's like when you build a functioning nuclear reactor, like get parts on a car at McLaren and then like do useful software work at Tesla. It's like, like, why do I need this? Like, I think I can just learn whatever skills I don't currently have myself, which is like maybe an arrogant perspective, but like it is kind of how I felt. And to be honest, my parents just forced me to do it. Yeah, they just forced me to go to college. So I like very begrudgingly went, but like I was never rooting for Northwestern or like never rooting for like myself at Northwestern. So like I definitely entered with a bad attitude. I also wanted to build a company, to stay in the Bay Area and to start a startup. Instead, I was in Northwestern. I still was going to like start my startup. So I more or less just ignored my academic work like the first quarter and invested all of my effort into sort of a proto BRINC idea. Did not go great for my like grades or anything, but I was just gonna do it. I just wanted to build a company and I didn't care.
At this moment, you start experimenting like entrepreneurship things. What you started to build and
well, I started playing around with like drone concepts at that time. It's because it's what I've always liked, and I thought there was opportunity there. I wasn't sure exactly what kind of company I wanted to build though. I was wondering maybe it should be a defense tech company or something that sells to like Homeland Security. So I pursued a couple of ideas there. During this time, I also interned at DJI. So I got some exposure to like the 800-pound gorilla in my space, which was interesting. Then I was able to convince my parents to just like let me take a leave of absence for a quarter to work on my projects. That's kind of how this happened. So I started taking these like leaves, and at the end of each quarter, I would like, I just need like one more quarter to finish this. Like I made so much progress. That happened like maybe 3 times until my parents were like, all right, yeah, we'll just like let him do it. The other important thing that happened around this time was the October 1 shooting happened. Actually, when I was in Las Vegas. So like one of my friends was on the Strip when the shooting was going on. He gave me a call kind of in the middle of it. And that's really what got me thinking about public safety technology. Where before I was more focused on like defense or something, this is what made me think, like I really think first responders could benefit from the right technology and, the right places at the right times to help save lives. And that's really the general concept that BRINC grew out of.
You were experimenting, but always in the same field that you started to become like good, started to have some leverage. Is there any companies who were working on this field? I mean, like drone for cops and for military use and all of this style of stuff?
Well, military drones are an old idea. There were absolutely companies that were working on, military specific. The idea of a public safety drone company, a drone company that just serves police and fire and emergency responders, no one has tried that. And even to this day, we're basically the only public safety drone company, which is kind of interesting, but is true. So that was new. The other thing that was new is I had this idea of a drone that could be deployed indoors, that could look around and give first responders eyes and ears in dangerous places. So they didn't have to risk their lives to understand, what their team might be walking into. And no one had really ever deployed like a quadcopter in an indoor environment during a SWAT call out. Like they had deployed them outside to be sort of like flying cameras in the sky. When we really start talking about a bird that could like break out a window, fly inside, navigate hallways, push open doors, if it ever crashed, landed on its back, flip itself over, take back off, continue a mission, find someone, use night vision to see at night, and then actually communicate with them and be a tool that a crisis negotiation team would use, that was a completely new idea. And that became BRINC's first product.
Okay, and at this moment, how it went from having this idea and knowing from yourself that it can help people and it can like be very like efficient, but people don't know it, and you have to educate, you have to show this.
Well, I wasn't sure myself if this was going to work. I mean, it started off, there were big questions. Like, could you even control a drone flying around indoors, especially like a racing drone platform? Because our early birds didn't have a lot of autonomy or pilot assistance. How would people react when they saw these things in their houses? Like, would this actually help or not? Like, how often would the drones suck things into their propellers and get taken out? Like, there are a lot of, would you be able to push a video signal from one of these birds through multiple houses of material so you can fly one of these things from sufficient range away that you're not risking your pilots' lives being, you know, close to a SWAT call out? There were a bunch of questions. So I started off with some vague ideas about how all of this stuff would work. I talked to Vegas's SWAT team. So I like cold called Vegas's SWAT team after October 1 and told them about my background and that this idea I had. Surprisingly, they were like willing to talk to me. So we kind of talked about some early ideas. I thought I had enough to build a prototype. So like I went back to my mom's house. I built the first version of this drone, maybe like 3 months later. Very proud of it. Set up a big demo with the entire SWAT team, showed it off. They hated it. They like absolutely hated it and told me so. I reflect on it positively because they really told me everything that had to change. So went back, totally re-engineered the drone. That took longer than like the initial engineering effort. Showed that version off. This time they're like, cool, we like it. We think this is going in a good direction. But before we buy it, we'd really like to test it on some actual SWAT callouts. Again, we have no idea if this is actually going to work. You know, you've been good to work with. So if you'd like, we'd love to invite you along on some of those missions. And maybe you can watch and see like what works and what doesn't work and keep improving it. Yeah, for about 6 months, like I went on call with, believe it or not, most years, like the busiest SWAT team in the United States. And more than anywhere, that's where the product was really developed. Like watching it succeed in missions, watching it fail in missions. If it ever did fail, going back and re-engineering the drone so it wouldn't fail again in the same way. And yeah, by the end of it, we really started affecting the way that these callouts would happen, where, you know, we would find suspects, be able to locate them, or we'd be able to tell SWAT like there's a person hiding in a closet they didn't expect was even there, or they'd be able to use our drone like a flying cell phone to negotiate with people and to cause peaceful resolutions where everyone walked away safe. And at the end of that, it became like a really important part of their response. People made fun of the drone in the early days, but like by the end of it, like the SWAT guys, they'd ask like, hey, where's the drone? Like, did the drone clear this place before they'd want to go in? It was just cool to watch that transition as the technology got better and it got better integrated into the team. It really became a useful tool. And Vegas Metro became our first customer. It was just kind of grown from there.
During the whole time, you were alone building it and improving it, or you started like working with people?
Yeah, through this, I really was pretty much alone. I was alone for like multiple years before achieving any level of success at all. Like it was pretty much either nothing or failure.
What was the driver of this?
I'll be honest, like it was kind of a dark time. I mean, I had no teammates. I had no funding. We did not attract like any press attention at all, like despite efforts along those lines. Did not attract any customers. Like it took way longer to convert Vegas Metro into a customer than I was expecting. It was painful. I wasn't sure if any of this was going to work. I wasn't sure if like I was good enough. Like, did I make a mistake? Like dropping out of school? It wasn't good. But, you know, really slowly, gradually, like over the years, you do build up some momentum, right? I think that first conversation with Vegas Metro SWAT was like an important inflection point looking back. That's what really got me pointing in the right direction and what resulted in a lot of the positive things that followed. I think that development relationship with Vegas Metro was also motivating. Like here are people that believe in me enough to like give me a chance and spend time with me and like try to partner, like do this together. Going on the SWAT callouts was extremely exciting. Like it was really cool getting the 3 a.m. call. It was like a hostage situation somewhere in Las Vegas and we need your drone to respond to. Awesome.
And it was the best place to get feedback at this point because like some people, they are afraid to discuss with customers or to analyze the customer's journey. At this point, you were in probably the more like difficult industry and you made it. And this was like essential. I think if it didn't went here and if it wasn't you, for example, who control this kind of device, you didn't even got like any feedback. And I think we have not been here today. I don't know what you think about this, but...
No, I think that's true. But listen, I mean, there were a couple of moments that I can remember that I really did seriously think about quitting. I think if you want to do this whole startup thing, like you almost have to just get it into your mind. No matter what happens, I'm not going to stop. Like the universe cannot stop me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep going no matter what. I'm going to pivot if it's necessary, but no matter what, I'm just going to keep trying to build this. And one thing that's really kind of nice, really early stage in a startup is you're really hard to kill. Like I was living with my parents. I didn't have expenses. I didn't have a team. There's no payroll. So like the only real failure mode for the company was me giving up, right? I mean, nothing else could have taken us down. Like only like stopping trying could have taken us down. As painful as that is kind of in the moment, it's a powerful position to be in because you're just empowered to keep trying things. And I think if you do that long enough and you're analyzing your decisions along the way and you're consuming some of the right media that's helping you think about things, eventually you'll reach something that works.
And of course, I think this work if you're already deeply interested and kind of obsessed with what you are creating. A lot of people want to create startup on field that are trendy and don't have very like deep interest on it. And I think it's more difficult to stay resilient, and resiliency is like one of the most important things when you want to create ambitious stuff. It's very difficult to be resilient if you don't very are deeply interested.
Yeah, it's fair. I think you sort of have to feel like you need it. If other life paths seem like almost equivalently interesting to you, I would probably recommend those life paths. I mean, there's this like very famous clip going around recently of like NVIDIA's founder and CEO talking about starting his company. I don't know if you've seen this, but he was asked in an interview, like, if you were starting a new company now, what industry would you want to enter? He kind of thought about it for a second and like looked at the guy and he said, like, I just wouldn't do it. And like the interviewer was like, what do you mean you wouldn't do it? It's like thinking about just how painful it was and how vulnerable I felt and like how much harder it was than I expected it was going to be. Like, I just couldn't do it again. I just wouldn't do it. That is kind of brutal to hear because like NVIDIA, like $1 trillion company now, right? It's like the best case scenario. If you're starting a company, like the outcome being NVIDIA is the best case scenario, one of the most valuable companies ever that has completely changed the world. In that case, like even in the condition where you have the best potential outcome possible, like you still look back and say like, I don't know if this was worth it. It should probably make people like think twice about doing this if they aren't already completely sure that the only way that they can live a fulfilling life is to give this a shot.
It has to be deeper than just like this startup dream.
I've always thought that drones were going to be an important technology. We've seen them really take off in the consumer space. A lot of people have $1,000 drones at this point. DJI does billions of dollars of revenue. We really have not seen drones take off in public safety, in commercial use cases, in industrial use cases, in agricultural use cases. And I've always believed that is the real promise of the technology. Automated drone deployments serving businesses will be, the real industry. That's been in the back of my mind for sure. October 1 changed my thinking. It added a new layer of mission on top of it, I would say, like wanting to build technologies to help first responders deal with their shooter situations. Then spending so much time with first responders, going on SWAT callouts, that focused me even more on this use case, like watching people like risk their lives, like personally being there, watching them risk their lives routinely to help keep other people safe. I mean, that is an amazing thing to witness and gave me so much respect for these people. Then like I went through a couple of other like events that got me thinking like even more about these. I was already pretty convinced, but when I first moved to Seattle, which is where we're based now, like I got home invaded and it was just like not a great experience. Would not recommend. It took first responders like over 15 minutes to show up. Like I was barricaded in my bedroom when all this was happening. That was terrible. Of course, like people that were doing it drove off and like weren't caught. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was eating dinner at a restaurant in Seattle and started hearing some like bangs. I was pretty sure they were gunshots, but I wasn't 100% sure. The person I was having dinner with was a Marine. He was completely sure. He like stood out, looked out the window. While this is happening, more gunshots are happening. He sees a black Suburban firing somewhere. At this point, maybe 10 gunshots have rung out. I wasn't sure what was happening. To me, this sounded like another mass shooting, or at least it was an active shooter event. Then the car again sped off. Like 1 minute went by, 3 minutes went by, 5 minutes went by, 7 minutes went by. Mind you, this is downtown Seattle. And then the place swarmed with police. You missed him. This person literally just tried to murder someone in the middle of a city, not far from 10 minutes after this was relevant. If they had a drone that was hooked up to those, 911 call taking systems or some gunshot detection mics, they could have sent it out, got eyes on in 45 seconds. Guess what? Now you know where the car is. Now you can wait until the person pulls over and accomplish the arrest there and prevent this person from trying to kill someone else. I don't even care about the drone. Like, I don't even care about the financial outcome. Even if I was guaranteed to work on like very boring technology and I was guaranteed to have no financial outcome, like I walk away with zero, but I was told that this technology really helps first responders. And you know what? It does save lives around the country. I'd still do it.
Getting back to like your Dropout story, etc. You got a mother that were like teacher and a father that were like doctor. How it went the moment you say I went to dropping out,
Oh, I mean, bad. Very bad. It did not go well. Yeah, my dad didn't like it, but my mom hated it.
For every of my guests, the mommy is always like more supportive than the father, usually.
Not in my case. She's a teacher. So it kind of makes sense. I mean, I wasn't ever really able to fully convince them. It was just like this sort of incremental step-by-step thing where you're like, oh, just let me take the leave. Like, I just need a little more time. I just need a little more time. I think my mom is still like kind of hoping I go back. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, BRINC has grown a lot now. Like we're one of the largest drone companies in the US. And my sister got into Stanford and my mom is way more proud of my sister. Like, not even close. I think nowadays, finally, my parents are pretty cool with the decision. They understand. It's worked out well enough that, like, okay, we get it. But like, it took years.
What will you say to people like you who are building stuff and who want to chase their dream and maybe like chasing their life project, chasing what they want to build? It's going to make them do like unconventional choice.
I just don't think life is worth living if you don't chase your dreams. You have to do it. It's a terrible outcome to be 80 on your deathbed thinking about your life and regretting just never taking that chance. It's really awful. But at the same time, accomplishing any of these really hard things, it is excruciating. It takes enormous amounts of time. You should plan for a decade. Really, you should plan for a decade. And if it takes a decade, it's a good outcome. But like, really, the bad outcome is multiple decades. If you have to do it to feel fulfilled and to feel like you've lived a good life, you just need to do it. But you should enter it with awareness of what it's going to be like, what the time commitment is, how hard it's going to be. And if you find that to be demotivating, and it's like, maybe my comfortable job making all this money is better, or like, I just can't afford to do this, perhaps it's not the right path. I don't know. It's hard. I'm still kind of figuring these things out myself, to be honest.
Yeah, and me too. I'm 33 years old, and job out,
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, it's an unconventional path, and it exposes you to amazing opportunities and, amazing chances of self-actualization and everything else. But, it also exposes you to like some tough situations, and that's just what the trade is. But if you have to do it, then you just have to do it. And frankly, whatever I say won't matter, because the people in that camp will be doing the thing regardless.
Knowing deeply what you want to do and analyzing if traditional school can help you achieve what you want to do. If not, what is the other option? Because at some point, there's like something you want to build, but traditional school will be required. Some kind of thing like in scientist projects, at some point you need a certain level of academic to understand things. So I see so many people who drop out at high school, college, etc. very early. Don't drop out just because it's cool or because you will have more time, because you can build stuff during the school at one point. It's just like if you have like a traction that show that what you've been dreaming on is real for others and for the market, because the reality of market is also something very important. Take the risk after working hardly and after deeply understand and analyzing that there's no point to push you to follow this dream. You have to do it at some point.
I completely agree with you. Very much enjoyed.
It was a pleasure, Blake. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. Really.
Thank you very much. Ciao, ciao.